"Excuse me, sir." "We're out of that meal," the flight attendant said, voice clipped, eyes flicking away as if the executive's presence were a disturbance. The black executive tilted his head slightly, calm, letting the words settle. "Out of what?" he asked quietly. "Your requested entree," the attendant replied, a tight edge in his tone. "We can offer something else," he nodded, slow, deliberate. "I'll take what is due, thank you." A subtle murmur ran through the cabin. Glasses clinked. A passenger's sleeve brushed another's as they shifted in seats, small coughs and quick glances marking unease. The hum of polite conversation felt fragile, like it could shatter with a single word. The attendant's jaw tightened. He glanced at his colleagues, a silent command passing between them. Hands hovered over trays, unsure. The executive's eyes scanned the cabin, not impatient, not angry, only steady. One attendant whispered to another, barely audible, "I've never seen anyone respond like that." The executive's fingers rested lightly on his armrest, unclenching slowly. Every small gesture spoke of composure earned through repeated battles fought silently in boardrooms, flights, and dinners where dignity was a demand, not a given. "I will bring another option," the attendant stammered, voice lower now. His authority felt unstable, unmoored, a thin veneer cracking in real time. Passengers exchanged glances, some leaning forward, drawn to the quiet tension. Cameras, phones, instinctively raised by some, captured the moment. Silence stretched, heavy, pregnant, a stillness that said more than any confrontation could. The executive exhaled softly, almost imperceptibly, eyes meeting the attendants. No anger, only clarity. The cabin waited, unblinking, as one quiet refusal began to ripple outward, invisible but undeniable. "Sir, that's not how it works here," the head attendant said, leaning slightly over the executive's tray table. His tone was calm, but the weight behind it pressed down like a hidden hand. "I understand," the executive replied evenly, eyes steady. "But I'd like what was promised." "That's all," the attendant's lips pressed together. I'll check, but I don't think—" "Please," the executive interrupted softly, a measured calm that made the words heavier than any shout. "I'm not asking for anything extra, just what's due." The other attendants shifted, hands hovering over trays, eyes flicking between the two. No one moved, caught in the unspoken power struggle. One whispered, barely audible, "He's not raising his voice." "That's unsettling." The head attendant's fingers tapped the edge of the tray table. "Protocols exist for a reason," he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. "You can't just—" The executive's gaze didn't waver. "I follow protocols too," he said quietly, "but not when they're used to deny what's mine." A pause filled the space, heavy and almost audible. A passenger cleared their throat nervously. Another leaned forward, phone half raised. Silence stretched longer than usual, each second amplifying tension. The head attendant's jaw tightened. We'll see what we can do," he said, retreating a step. His usual certainty faltered, his authority quietly eroding under the weight of a composure he couldn't break. The executive's hand rested lightly on his armrest. No smile, no victory gesture, just patience, quiet and deliberate. Around them, the crew froze, realizing the hierarchy they relied on was cracking in real time, and the silent dignity before them demanded acknowledgement. Even the hum of the cabin felt different now, heavier, as if the atmosphere itself had shifted. "I'll take what is due." "Thank you," he said, voice low but unmistakable, carrying weight far beyond the words themselves. The flight attendant froze mid-step, eyes widening, fingers hovering over the tray. A flush of uncertainty crept across his face, subtle but undeniable. Another crew member leaned back slightly, shifting trays nervously. Sir, that's all," the executive interrupted calm, letting the sentence land like a quiet hammer. "Nothing extra. Nothing missing either." A passenger's phone camera tilted slightly, capturing the moment. Another whispered to a friend, barely audible, "Did he just—" The head attendant's jaw tightened. "Protocols," he started, voice brittle, faltering. "I understand your protocols," the executive replied steadily, eyes meeting his, unwavering. But they don't extend to denying someone what's theirs. The cabin held its collective breath. Silence became thick, almost physical. Glasses clinked softly as attendants glanced at each other, hesitation spreading like ripples across water. I'll check, the attendant stammered, voice low, fragile. He stepped back slightly, authority quietly slipping through his fingers. Another crew member whispered, "He's unshakable." The executive's gaze didn't move from the man, calm and measured. No anger, no threat, just quiet dignity that demanded acknowledgement. The murmurs among passengers grew, subtle but present, as if the cabin itself was awakening to a new awareness. Narration. Every word he spoke carried years of unspoken resistance. Quiet battles in boardrooms and flights where respect had been withheld. One simple, steady line now stretched beyond the cabin, exposing a flaw in the structure of unchecked authority. The attendant exhaled slowly, retreating further, a silent concession. The executive leaned back slightly, posture unchanged, letting the room absorb the shift in power without a single raised voice. A passenger cleared their throat quietly, glancing at the executive. Did you see that? He just stood there. Calm, another whispered. Phone slightly raised. Recording. The head attendant's frown deepened, subtle tremor in his hand as he straightened his uniform. This isn't how it's supposed to go, he muttered under his breath. Excuse me? The executive asked softly, eyes steady, not accusatory. Nothing, the attendant said quickly, stepping back. His usual certainty had begun to erode, replaced by doubt that spread like smoke through the cabin. A flight attendant near the back murmured to a colleague, I think he's making us look foolish. Shh, the other replied, glancing at passengers. Keep calm. The executive exhaled slowly, calm but deliberate. I'm not here to cause trouble, just to receive what's promised, he said quietly, letting the words sink into the silent, heavy air. Narration. The cabin held its breath. Every glance, every whispered exchange, a small fracture in a long-held hierarchy. Authority relied on obedience, and obedience had begun to falter. Unseen, but undeniable. A passenger nudged another, whispering, He's not raising his voice. And yet, phones lifted subtly. Eyes that once avoided the executive now lingered, tracking his composure, noting the attendant's hesitation. A ripple began, small, almost imperceptible, yet unstoppable. The head attendant's jaw tightened. We'll handle it, he said, voice low, brittle. The executive leaned back, calm, letting the pause stretch, letting everyone feel the quiet power of restraint. Around him, the cabin shifted, not through confrontation, but through silent acknowledgement, a collective recognition that one small act could unsettle an entire system. I don't get it, a young attendant whispered to a colleague, glancing nervously at the executive. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. And yet, shh, the colleague muttered, eyes darting around. Just follow procedure. Narration. Decades of unspoken rules, policies favoring some and dismissing others, had created a fragile illusion of order. Quiet injustices stacked silently, unseen, until someone refused to bend beneath them. The head attendant's hand brushed against the service cart, fingers trembling slightly. This isn't usual, he muttered, voice low, almost inaudible. A cabin attendant by the rear row murmured, I've never seen anyone respond like that. I know, whispered another, tone shaky. It's unsettling. Like he's pointing out everything we've ignored for years. The executive's gaze remained calm, steady. I'm not here to make you uncomfortable, he said softly. I'm just asking for what's due. A passenger's phone screen glimmered, catching snippets of hushed exchanges, recording not just the moment, but the quiet awakening of awareness among crew and travelers alike. I think we overlooked something, the head attendant admitted under his breath, jaw tight. We've done this before. And it went unnoticed. Narration. The cracks in hierarchy were subtle, almost invisible, but growing. Every hesitant glance, every whispered doubt, exposed a rot long hidden behind uniformed authority. The weight of unchallenged power was shifting, bending beneath the quiet insistence of dignity. The young attendant exhaled, hand pressed to her chest. Maybe it doesn't have to be this way, she murmured, eyes flicking to the executive, absorbing composure that had taken years to cultivate. The cabin held its breath, suspended between past wrongs and the possibility of quiet correction, as the first tremors of systemic change whispered through the rows. Did anyone else see that? A junior flight attendant whispered, fingers gripping the tray. Of course we did, another muttered, eyes down, voice trembling. Everyone did. The head attendant's jaw tightened, lips pressed into a thin line. Stay focused, he said, voice brittle, trying to reclaim control. Focused on what? The junior asked quietly, barely audible. Following rules that silence people? Serving arrogance instead of justice? A pause stretched, heavy and almost unbearable. Hands hovered over trays, trembling slightly as the crew avoided eye contact with each other and the executive. Narration. Authority thrives on obedience, but obedience carries its own weight. Every glance, every hesitation, every unspoken fear pressed down on the crew like an invisible burden. The quiet dignity of one man had begun to shift the balance, exposing cracks in a hierarchy long taken for granted. I don't know if I can, another muttered under their breath. We've always done what we're told. And look where that's gotten us, the junior replied softly, tone sharp but careful. Is it worth it? The executive's gaze remained steady, calm. I don't want to put anyone at risk, he said softly. I only ask for what is rightfully mine. Eyes flicked nervously between him and the head attendant, who shifted uncomfortably, authority faltering with every passing second. Maybe it's time we rethink what following orders means, whispered one attendant, almost to themselves. Narration. The weight of power is only as strong as those who uphold it without question. When conscience awakens, when dignity refuses to bow, the strongest structures start to tremble. The arrogance that once towered now felt precarious, fragile, exposed. The head attendant exhaled, shoulders tightening while the crew exchanged quiet, uncertain nods, small gestures of defiance, subtle acknowledgement that the old balance was beginning to collapse. The phone vibrated quietly in a passenger's hand. I shouldn't, a young man murmured, eyes darting toward the flight attendant. Do it, another whispered, leaning close. Just record it. People need to see what's happening. The camera lens lifted slowly, capturing the exchange, the subtle tension, the frozen faces. Narration, a silent witness, unaware, held a device that would carry truth further than any confrontation could. The act itself was small, almost invisible, yet it would ripple outward, shaking the foundations long ignored. The head attendant's frown deepened. What are you doing? Documenting, the passenger replied calmly, thumb hovering over the screen. It's for record. Just record. The executive's eyes flicked briefly toward the recording. No fear, only quiet dignity. Thank you, he said softly. That's all that's needed. Should we stop him? Whispered a flight attendant, voice barely audible. No, the junior replied, trembling. It's better this way. Let them see. Let it speak for itself. Narration. The weight of authority trembled under the gaze of composure. Restraint became louder than anger. Silence became louder than threat. And in that quiet, small action, power began to shift. The head attendant swallowed, eyes flicking nervously to the crew, who avoided looking back. A shaky breath, hands fidgeting with trays, uniforms creasing in tension. I can't keep pretending, whispered one crew member. This isn't right. Narration. One act, one frame captured, one quiet refusal to bow. It would travel beyond the cabin, beyond the walls of protocol, beyond complacency itself. The scales of justice had begun to tilt, imperceptibly yet irrevocably. The passenger lowered the phone. A nod of understanding. No words needed. The shift had begun. Do you remember him from the corporate dinner last year? whispered a junior officer, glancing toward the executive. "I do," another murmured. He handled the CEO's outburst with calm. Everyone else froze. The head attendant passed by, frowning. "Why is everyone staring?" His voice, sharper now, betrayed unease. A crew member muttered under their breath, "I've never seen someone respond like that," without anger. Narration. Years of silent battles and unnoticed resilience now collided with this single moment. Composure wasn't weakness. It was armor built through countless denials and quiet indignities, each layering the strength that now shook arrogance to its core. One flight attendant exchanged a glance with another. He doesn't even flinch. How does he stay so calm? "He's not flinching," whispered the other. "He's holding them accountable without shouting, without giving them the satisfaction." The head attendant's hands trembled slightly, invisible to most passengers, but noticeable to those paying attention. I don't understand. He's calm." Narration. Even authority, long protected and unchallenged, wavered in subtle tremors. The invisible hierarchy that demanded obedience began to shift, tiny cracks forming where arrogance had once been solid. From the back of the cabin, a passenger whispered, "It's like he's untouchable without even raising his voice." Another added quietly, "And yet, he doesn't need to fight the fight. It's already won." The head attendant exhaled slowly, jaw tight. Crew members avoided direct eye contact, their trays shaking ever so slightly. Narration. In the quiet, the balance of power teetered. One man's dignity forced reflection, hesitation, and doubt. The first fractures appeared, subtle yet unmistakable, heralding the unraveling that could no longer be contained. A slow nod passed between two crew members. No words, the shift was silent but undeniable. "Objection!" the lawyer snapped, voice tense. But the hero didn't flinch. "Overruled," the judge replied, eyes steady, then turned to the protagonist. "You may proceed," the judge said, nodding slightly. The hero's gaze swept the room, calm but commanding. "Justice isn't a favor. It's a right," they said, voice low, deliberate. A whisper ran through the audience. "Did you hear that?" The antagonist shifted in their seat, jaw tight. They can't just say that." "They can," muttered a witness under their breath. And it's true. Narration. Even the brightest lights couldn't illuminate the weight of decades hidden in shadows. Authority, long assumed unshakable, trembled under quiet dignity. Every eye in the room measured the subtle collapse, sensing the unspoken reckoning. The antagonist's hand twitched, fingers tapping against the desk. I don't understand. How can they remain so composed?" "Calm isn't weakness," whispered a clerk, barely audible. "It's strategy, patience, and truth." Another observer murmured, "The arrogance, it's fading." The hero's eyes never left the antagonist, voice steady. "We stayed silent for too long. Today, silence is no longer an option." A slight shiver passed through the courtroom staff. This is different," whispered one attorney. Narration. The room's pulse shifted. Authority no longer dictated the rhythm. Restraint and moral clarity did. Every hesitant glance, every unspoken question built toward the inevitable unraveling. Silence itself became louder than any argument or plea. The antagonist's face paled. A subtle sigh escaped, unnoticed by most but heavy with defeat. The audience leaned forward, sensing a turning point, a tremor that would ripple far beyond these walls. A juror's hand hovered over a note, then slowly withdrew. Nothing more needed to be said. The antagonist's hand shook slightly as he reached for his notes, eyes darting to the gallery. You can't," he stammered, voice barely above a whisper. "You can," replied the hero calmly, eyes steady. "Truth is not negotiable." A juror leaned forward, murmuring, "Finally, someone is saying it." Narration. Every carefully constructed facade began to crack. Confidence once absolute now wavered, revealing the brittle structure beneath. Arrogance, protected for decades, could not withstand a single act of restrained courage. The antagonist's lips pressed tightly together. "This isn't fair. None of this is fair, fair?" the hero asked softly, voice carrying through the courtroom. Fairness was never on the table. Integrity is. A flight attendant, in the back, muttered, "We should have spoken sooner." Another witness whispered, "I can't believe it took this long." "But it's happening." The antagonist's face paled. A bead of sweat slid down his temple. I don't understand. How did this get here?" Narration. Silence amplified every tremor of doubt. Authority no longer dictated the space. Restraint and moral clarity dominated. Each whispered acknowledgement of past complicity widened the invisible fracture lines, letting dignity fill the void left by collapsed power. The hero's gaze remained unbroken. "We stayed silent for too long," they said, tone steady. "But silence ends now." Murmurs of agreement passed through the audience. Yes, finally." The antagonist's fingers fumbled over documents, then withdrew. His chair creaked under shifting weight, a quiet collapse audible in the room's stillness. Another victim, voice quivering, added, "This is overdue. We won't be ignored anymore." Narration. The room shifted subtly, yet undeniably. What had once been unchallenged arrogance now bore the weight of exposure, and the hero's quiet dignity left the silence richer than any shout. The antagonist sank back, eyes hollow, while the hero simply nodded, calm, resolute, letting justice speak without raising a voice. The hero's footsteps echoed softly on the empty sidewalk. A phone buzzed quietly in a pocket. "Notifications ignored. I wonder, did it make a difference?" they murmured, voice low, almost to themselves. A friend's voice came through a message tone. "You were amazing today." The truth finally spoke. "Not for me," the hero replied, voice steady. "For what's right." Narration. Each step traced the path of endurance. Moments once dismissed as trivial now formed the backbone of unyielding dignity. Reflections were not lamentations, they were affirmations, quiet yet undeniable, echoing through personal history and public reckoning alike. The hero walked on, hands in pockets, shoulders squared, letting the calm air carry both reflection and the subtle weight of victory. A notification pinged. The hero glanced at the phone. Video trending worldwide. "People are talking." A friend's voice came through a video call, tense but excited. "Have you seen it? The whole country's watching. People are questioning everything now." "I have," the hero replied softly. "It's not about watching. It's about seeing, truly seeing." Narration. Moments once silent, unseen, now echoed across timelines and feeds. Every retweet, share, and comment carried weight, small but relentless, shaking walls built for decades. A coworker texted, "Management is in chaos. No one knows how to respond." The hero leaned back, eyes distant. "They won't change overnight," they said, voice calm. "But the cracks are visible. That's enough to start." Another message. "People are stepping away. Policies are shifting. Even the quiet ones are speaking now." A reporter's call came next. "Can we comment on the systemic review underway?" "Tell them," the hero said quietly. "Truth travels even when voices are hushed. It always finds its way." Narration. The antagonist, once untouchable, now moved cautiously. Former allies hesitated before sending messages. Old privileges lost their invisible shield. The world adjusted slowly, like water finding new channels in a fractured dam. A neighbor texted, "You inspired people. It's changing conversations everywhere." "Not me," the hero murmured, voice steady. "People are seeing each other." That's the shift. Narration. The quiet dignity that carried through years of silenced complaints now rippled outward. Justice did not roar. It traveled in whispers, in subtle withdrawals of support, in recognition of wrongs long ignored, and the world finally began to notice. The hero placed the phone down, a soft exhale escaping. Hands rested calmly on the table. The city outside continued, unaware of its own slow awakening.